Hello, everyone. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello, welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about Joe Biden had a not so perfect phone call with Ukraine, which I shared this on my Facebook page, and I had a pretty funny back and forth. Someone was like, I think that's something you get impeached over, and I said, I'll have to look into that. Like, I'll have to research that. Maybe there's some kind of precedent there. And they're like, I hope you can find something, Black Tea. So, of course, we know that Trump got in trouble for his perfect phone call, as Trump likes to say. But Biden, the problem with the phone call is that the way that the White House and their transcript laid out is very different than the account of the people of Ukraine. So, I guess there's no way to know. I mean, unless, what the Biden White House is saying, even if who knows if they even put everything down in the transcript, or if they're just not telling us exactly. But so people are saying release a transcript, like, they're like, well, Trump released his transcript, and there's a video of Biden talking about how they need to release a transcript. And at the time when Trump did decide to release his transcript for full disclosure and transparency and stuff, there were concerns about releasing transcripts of presidential calls. But I guess that's what happens when you demand a precedent. You may have to follow it one day. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to be playing at least a clip that CNN put up, and then they took it down, and then they got called out for taking it down. So then they put it back up, the video about the phone call. So it's all very interesting. Also in Canada, they have had their convoys of truckers who are protesting. That's not getting a lot of talk in the media. It's not even getting a lot of play on social media and stuff. It's kind of hard to dig around for it, but there's more people talking about it. Elon Musk, gave support. I saw Russell Brand giving support, and I said this maybe sometime last week. I was talking to my sister about it. I just never thought that I would be which I still disagree with Russell Brand on things, but there's one point in time I was just so kind of personally disgusted with him. I was like, I will never say anything he's in, and now I'm just like, oh, Russell Brand has a pretty interesting podcast, and they can have pretty interesting conversation. So politics made strange bedfellows, I suppose. And then also Bill Maher, sharing things, talking about Bill Maher and having discussions about, with Bill Maher and some of the stuff that he says, just because they're erring toward the side of freedom, and that's their thing. They've said some offensive things in the past, and that's why I've been upset and perturbed at times. But so, you can disagree with people and still be together on the right side of history. Also, I want to talk about Evangeline Lilly, who's an actress in a lot of people know her as the Wasp in Ant-Man and the Wasp, of course, and Ant-Man. She was in Infinity War. And she was also in Lost. That's when I first saw her. I think that was maybe her biggest breakout sort of thing. So I did not even like her character on that show, but I loved Lost. I've seen it 3-4 times. But she was actually at the march in DC. So she revealed that on social media, on Instagram, and so it was all a buzz on the Twitter internet last night, on the Twitter pages. So people had some interesting commentaries. A lot of people were really mad about it. I did go to her Instagram, and I saw a lot of people supporting her. Of course, there's some interesting comments, but just loads of praise. I did go on there and I commented, and I said, please do not apologize for this. And that was all I said. I'm like, please do not apologize for this. I'm pretty sure that's all I said. Because she has said things in the past and have come back and apologized for them. So just know there's no point in apologizing to these crazy people. You got to stick to your guns. And so I was pretty distressed about some of the people who were coming at her, and then people were also talking about Latita Wright, who played Shuri in Black Panther. That's Black Panther's sister, because she's a Christian. And I don't know if her Christian beliefs have anything to do with her non-stance on the vaccine or whatever, but she didn't want to get vaccinated, and she was like holding up filming for what they want to do with the shooting of the next Black Panther film and other sort of projects. And she's an enormously popular character, but people are coming for her. But we'll break into more of that when I break into that particular segment. But before I jump into the news of the day, I do want to talk about, well, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content that I have on the website, different articles that I've written, check out different merch that I have. Like I got the cool goat hoodie there. Be better, not better. That's, one that I made after I got into too many conversations with these very angry blacktivists, I suppose, who were justifying burning and looting and rioting and stuff. So I was just like, you know what, if we're gonna build a better world, you got to be better, not bitter. So that's why I made that shirt. There was a white person who asked me, I wore that on TikTok, and they're like, oh, that's a really cool shirt. Could I wear that, or would I offend people? I'm like, you probably would offend people, but you can wear it whatever you want. People need to stop asking for so much permission on stuff. As long as people know that you're asking for permission, there's gonna be people who aren't gonna give it. So you live your best life, hon. You live your best life. I also got the I'm Not the Victim You're Looking For, got Black Tea Mug and Constitution's Glorious Liberty document. You Are Not That Special. All kinds of stuff you guys can check out at blacktnews.com. Please check out some of the books and stuff that I've written, like Super Kid and Super Kid 2. If you're looking for something for a chapter book, a good chapter book for kids and you want to instill some good morals and values in people, that's a good book to check out. I was thinking about in the sequel, Super Kid 2, a really big lesson that Felix has to learn, because he's dealing with this big bully who's older than him and stronger. There's just like no way it seems like this kid's gonna be able to win. And at that point of time, and to spoil it a little bit, but I'm pretty sure your kids will be reading it, not you so much. It is a good book if you want to read it with them. So he goes to he like challenges them, because he just knows that he has to stand up to him, so at least someone will do it. So he talks to his dad about it, and his dad is just kind of like, sometimes the impossible battles are the ones that you have to fight, that are the most important to fight. So I was thinking about that, because I was putting together like my content for the Right to Life March, what I went to last week, and I'm grateful to all the sponsors who did donate, especially our gold sponsor, who is a Michigan Conservative Coalition. Everyone who sponsored, I do appreciate that. But I was putting together the package for that, and I was thinking about how daunting the task is sometimes about going at it with people who are for abortion and trying to take down Roe v. Wade and just this big behemoth. And people say all the time, we're not going to get rid of it, we're not going to stop it. And I like to be more optimistic than that. But even if it were impossible, there's still impossible battles that are still moral, that you do have to fight. I'm pretty sure people thought ending slavery once upon a time ago was an impossible task, was an impossible battle. And people are probably like, oh my gosh, did she just compare the two? When you're dehumanizing people so you can take away their rights, so you can exercise privilege over them for your convenience, yeah, I think they're kind of similar, actually. I think that they're very similar in that regard. The mentality behind it. Obviously, they're not the same thing, but I think the mentality behind it is similar, sure. And there are people, obviously, who were for it, and it was legal, and it was something that people pushed very hard. It was something that if you spoke out against, you could lose a lot, including your life. And we're in a very hostile environment. When you go back and forth with people on this issue, it makes a lot of people uncomfortable, and people try to make it as uncomfortable as possible for people who are pro-life. But there's so many people there who went there. There's thousands of people there, and people appreciate me going and like posting stuff, because they said they didn't see a lot of coverage for it. But as someone who was there, I was glad to see so many young people on the ground. And I say young people as if well, people assume I'm younger than I am. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm so inspired by this young generation, and you give me hope. And I'm like, I'm in my 30s. I'm sorry, I'm not as young as you think I am. And sometimes I joke. I'm like, you don't have to don't have the hope. I'm older than you think. But no, we should have hope, because there are a lot of young people on the ground who's willing to fight to do the right thing, peacefully protest, march, spread information, have conversations. And I know that's hard for a lot of different people. But the more we stand up to injustice together, the more we'll look around and see that we've blotted out that evil. So just some little thoughts before I get started with the heavier stuff. Because, man, there's something that made me angry today, and I'm definitely going to get into it. Definitely going to get into one of those stories. So before I jump into it, I did have a meme that I saw. Not a meme, it was a tweet, but I didn't screenshot it. But someone said that Joe Biden should make a challenge to Spotify that either Joe Rogan has to get his podcast taken down, or he has to end his presidency. And that was in reference to Neil Young, saying that you either have to get rid of Joe Rogan stuff or get rid of my music. And of course, he played a game of chicken that he didn't win. Joe Rogan ended up, still on there with Spotify, and Neil Young is getting booted off of Spotify, and 60% of his streaming revenue comes from Spotify. So, yeah, let's have Joe Biden make that challenge, and we'll see what happens. But in all honesty, though, I do want Joe Biden to wait it out, because I think Kamala is awful, and you guys know she's my least favorite, and I really don't want her to be president. I really don't want her to be president. So. Nikki Haley said if Joe Biden loved this country, he would step down and take Kamala with her, which some people are talking about impeachment. I've heard, over like the border crisis. People are talking about this Ukraine phone call. That's not going to be enough to do anything. And politically can't do anything right now anyway, because it's 50-50, and it wouldn't be a good political move anyway. Republicans are going to take the House and Senate, and impeachment hasn't worked very well politically in the past anyway. So the best thing we can do is just try to kneecap Biden at every possible sort of way politically, and just try to wait it out until 2024. I know that's like not what people want to hear, but he's bad and Kamala's bad. They're both bad. They're both bad. There is no better option. There is no better option. Sorry, guys. I do want to thank Brighter Michigan Tech. I am in their studio today. If I say something today that triggers you, I don't know who's watching, but someone might get triggered today. There's no one to complain to. It doesn't work like that. I'm just here, and they uplift conservative voices, and I do appreciate being able to use their space. So I'm very grateful to the Brighter Michigan PAC, but there's no one to cry to. It doesn't work like that. I'm sorry. Or sorry, not sorry. So first thing I want to talk about, these Canadians who are fighting for their freedoms in a peaceful way. As Russell Brand I just watched a video of him talking about it. So he talked about it at length on his show, his podcast. And so, but I only saw like a little clip of him encouraging other people to check out the bigger podcast, but being grateful that they're doing this. He's also curious why the media isn't really talking about it. Because if it is the largest like convoy like that, it's at least going to make the Guinness World Book of Records. You do actually have to like pay, I think, for them to come out and like look at that kind of stuff, because my dad did look into that at one point in time for a separate thing for us. So but that's interesting, the how large it is. Some of the truckers I've heard are upset about some of the news coverage that they've gotten, because they try to find people who are crazy or will say the most radical things. And sometimes people aren't crazy, but they just, I don't know, are very excited, and they don't come off the best way in the media. They do a hatchet job and stuff too. So there's plenty of people out there who are ordinary, and they just, don't appreciate the mandates. So there's vaccine mandates in Canada that if you cross over the border and you're unvaccinated, you're supposed to have like a 2-week quarantine. And so they're protesting that. So there's this big convoy of trucks. I have a video of a little bit. They're all over it. I think I haven't really seen any on TikTok. That's weird that none has really popped in my feed that way. I've just seen a couple people post a couple things on Twitter, really. Look at all that support, all that love. I'm cold just looking at them. It is cold in this studio, by the way. But people are out there. They're supporting this because it's gone too far. A lot of this stuff has gone too far. Justin Trudeau, someone clipped a video of him talking about why it's important to preserve freedoms, even when it's hard, and then they clip like to present day, like we know that this is going against your rights and your freedoms, and we're gonna do it anyway. So I'm like, dude, that is not appropriate. That is not appropriate. But they don't care. Actually, Trudeau was asked about these truckers, and he upset a lot of people with his comments.
The small fringe minority of people who are on their way to Ottawa or who are holding unacceptable views that they're expressing do not represent the views of Canadians who have been there for each other, who know that following the science and stepping up to protect each other is the best way to continue to ensure our freedoms, our rights, our values as a country.
Next question.
They're holding unacceptable views, these fringe extremists. Looks like there's a lot of people there. And there's probably a lot more people out there who feel the way they do, but they won't stand up because they're concerned or whatnot. But you can try to just toss them away as extreme fringe people if you want to. But saying they're holding these unacceptable views and expressing them. That's so tyrannical. They're expressing these unacceptable views. What, that you should be free? That it doesn't make that if you don't have it, you shouldn't be to quarantine for 2 weeks when they have jobs to do, they have to deliver product, they have to put food on their table. And there's labor shortages everywhere, and you want to impose this? And it's not because you're trying to follow the science, dude. It's because you want them to just do it. With Quebec, they wanted to put on a penalty for people who aren't vaccinated, and they're at like 90%. So if you're like 90% vaccination status, and you're saying, well, we still got to find people. What is that about? You're not happy with 90%? You still have to punish everyone else? That's what it's about. You didn't comply, so I want to punish you. Because if you're not happy with 90%, if you're not happy with 90%, you're not going to be happy with practically anything, any sort of opposition to you and your authority at all. So God bless these Canadians going back and forth who are standing for their rights. Jordan Peterson has, spoke up for them. Elon Musk said something for them. But they're not getting a lot of play. Like again, I'm not even like seeing it come up in my like algorithm on the stuff that I'm in, really. So I did want to mention it. I think what they're doing is important. We actually had like a protest in Lansing. It was like the gridlock rally, and this was after our lockdowns got really stupid. Like people were complying, but then they got really dumb. They got really, really dumb. You can go on a boat, but only if you don't have a motor. If you have a motor, you can't go. If you're in the store, they have to be sectioned off things that aren't essential. So you can't like buy seeds or something. And Whitmer like got on TV and was like, "It's cold. People aren't growing things right now." Like really dumb stuff. Like that's not the point, Whitmer. And yes, people are doing stuff. People are still doing stuff. Like paint thinner was closed off. You may think that's not an important thing to people. But my little sister, she's a painter, so she will rant about that all day long. Because you're cutting into her business when you're just needlessly roping off stuff. So our stuff got really dumb. So in Lansing, people drove up in their cars around the Capitol and created this huge gridlock of traffic. I wasn't there. I did watch like the live stream, and I'm like, oh, part of me was like, oh, this is really cool. This is, other part of me is like, I'd be so angry because traffic is annoying to everybody, but geez, everybody's like honking and yelling, and it was cool. I commend everyone who went. I just wasn't there, but it was cool. It was cool. But everything they did just seems like it just invoked more of her wrath. Like I'm pretty sure nothing like kind of tamed her. Even when like the Supreme Court shot down like some of her powers, like our Michigan Supreme Court, she just found another way to terrorize people. The only thing that probably calmed her down is that some donors got with her and was like, Jen, sorry, not Jen, Gretchen, you gotta calm this down. You gotta calm this down a little bit. So she hasn't really done much because I'm sure she has election. She's not dumb. She's not dumb. I'm sure that even though Michigan had a lot of cases and stuff, I'm sure that's why we haven't seen a lot of things pop up in Michigan. But hats off to them. Someone else who gave them big kudos and mentioned that they were there fighting for their freedoms was Evangeline Lilly. So she played Kate. Was her name Kate Bishop? No. I think that's the name of the person who's on Hawkeye. Kate Austin on Lost. So that was her character. That was her big breakout sort of role that people became accustomed to her in. And Lost was a really good show. If you haven't seen it, I love that show, and I did understand the ending. I know that was controversial for people, but I did get the ending, and I like the ending. I really like Lost. I've seen it several times. But she's also in she plays the Wasp in the Marvel films, Ant-Man and the Wasp, and she was in Infinity War. Or was Infinity War just the last one was Endgame? I guess it was Endgame. And so she revealed on Instagram that she was actually at the rally on Sunday in DC. And that was an anti-vaccine mandate rally. Now, I did not know how that was going to be. I know Malone mentioned it on Joe Rogan's show. When I saw some footage and some people talking, there were people that I like recognize, like the comedian with the red hair who's always like trashing the liberals and stuff. He's funny. He does good parodies, good satires. I saw him and some other people there, and some videos, but I haven't really seen a lot of stuff from that either. But they had a good turnout. And I was concerned. I'm like, if people were gonna pop off something, some kind of like anti-demonstration to cause a ruckus, that's the kind of thing that you would go to. So I was talking to a friend about it, and I was like, I don't know about that one. And they were concerned about going to, and they wanted, and other people were pressuring them to go, but they were concerned, about going as well. And so I was like, I'm like, I went home. My brother was preaching in a revival anyway, and I said I would be back, so I want to get back anyway. But it looked like it turned out really well. But I was found it interesting that she just outed that she was there. No one else did it. She just put it on Instagram. So she said, let me get rid of my little logo here so I can read this. I was in DC this weekend to support bodily sovereignty while Canadian truckers were rallying for their cross-country peaceful convoy in support of the same thing. I believe nobody should ever be forced to inject their body with anything against their will under threat of violent attack, arrest, or detention without trial, loss of employment, homelessness, starvation, loss of education, alienation from loved ones, excommunication from society, under any threat whatsoever. This is not the way. This is not safe. This is not healthy. This is not love. I understand the world is in fear, but I don't believe that answering fear with force will fix our problems. I was pro-choice before COVID, and I am still pro-choice today. So that was her post. So I commend her. I did go on Instagram and I said, don't apologize for this. Which on Instagram, there was a lot of love and support coming her way. And she did reply to some people who were rude, but she just was still replied with kindness. She still replied with much kindness to these people. So kudos to her. I hope she doesn't back down and apologize for going there, apologize for standing with these people, and apologize for posting this. Because in a sane world, this all makes total and complete sense. Some people are like, it's not forced because you have options. Well, she laid out it pretty well. She doesn't think it's right that anyone should be forced to do anything like that against their will under the threat of. Okay, you do have a choice, but there's a threat there. Let's not get it twisted. Violent attack, arrest or detention without trial, loss of employment, homelessness, starvation, loss of education, alienation from loved ones, excommunication from society under any threat whatsoever. So people have been targeted, and you may not have a job. There's plenty of people who have lost their job. There's people who quit, people who were fired. And there are people who buckled, which I understand. So at the end of the day, they did have their families to feed. And they went ahead and they got it. And I know people who were forced to get it. They got really sick from the jab. And they're still like mad that they had to relent, but they felt that was eventually what was best for them, because what other option did they have? I'm going to have a guest on my show in some time. I'm hoping it's tomorrow, but it may be next week. He's a Canadian, and he got tested, and he needed it for employment. Some kind of either he needed to get vaccinated or he needed what do you call it when you an exemption. And so his doctor didn't want to give him one. And it wasn't going to be like a fake one. He wanted a medical one. And so his doctors kind of let him know, like, they're really like hampering down on us. Like, they don't want us to give exemptions. So don't think that there's not doctors just liberally giving them because they don't like it or whatever. There's some kind of pressure. At least I've heard that before, but this is what he was explaining. So they're like, well, you have to get some kind of test to see if you're going to have a reaction. So he tested like all the sort of stuff that's in the vaccine. And he tested, like, he had a reaction to like every single thing in there. So he's like, okay, well, can I get my medical exemption? They're like, no. He's like, what? And they're like, we'll just give you a Benadryl drip at the same time we give you the vaccine. It's like, that's like what he did. Because they wouldn't give him a medical exemption, even though he's like alerted to like everything in it. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? That's like more bizarre than not giving people a religious exemption? But they don't want to give them for whatever reason. So people have relented, but there's a lot of people who are sticking to the guns and won't do it. But you're still between this rock and this hard place, and it doesn't make any sense from a good governing standpoint, unless the point is to flex how much power you can have and take all that you can accumulate. If your role was to protect freedom and the liberties of the governed, like at least in the US you're supposed to be doing, then this is definitely bad policy and it's definitely bad governance. If your goal is to just keep assuming power, then I guess it was a good political tactic. I mean, until you're voted out, but I think our freedoms, our liberties, they've been dented up pretty good. I think there's going to be some long-term impact. Loss of education, so people can't go to school, like the different colleges. There's people who go to online stuff and they're like, you still need to be vaccinated. Like, are you kidding me? They're really, really pushing it. There's some schools that, like, even if you go into like a game and stuff, everybody has to show the vaccine card. Everyone has to have proof of vaccination. When I went to DC, I made sure that I used the bathroom somewhere in Maryland, and I did not go into a building when I was in DC. I did not. I had some snacks in my backpack because I knew I couldn't go in anywhere and eat anything. And I peed when I got to the next place. But you got to show an ID there and your vax card. But just FYI, it's racist to require an ID to vote. Because that's the world we live in. And it makes no sense. So people who try to say no one is forcing you to get it, we all understand that they're still making you get it, or there are repercussions. So she's saying it's not right. Now, I don't know how she feels about vaccines in general, because there's some people who are just totally anti-vax. Well, FYI, if you're against mandates, you're technically anti-vax. It's like the definition now, right? So a lot of people are anti-vax now. But there's a lot of people out there who have had vaccines, who take the flu shots, who've taken, hepatitis, all that other kind of stuff that you normally take. I don't really get the flu shot or anything like that, but I've had my childhood stuff, except for, besides stuff that I was infected with, like, naturally, like chicken pox and stuff. So there's people out there who appreciate and understand vaccines, but they just don't like the force of this one, or they're just not into this one at all. Or there's people who are vaccinated with the COVID-19 vaccine, but they're still saying, we don't like the force. Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro was such a pro-vax dude himself, and he will sit down with people and try to convince them to take it. He will, like, analyze their risks and really try to convince them to do it. And I don't know if he's really convinced anyone doing that sort of way, but he's very passionate about it. But they were still, like, the first company to file against OSHA mandates. So someone can be for the science and understand the vaccines and think they're good for people, but not think how we are governing our societies right now is good for our societies in the long run. So kudos to her. I hope she doesn't delete it. But she has been facing backlash. I saw tweets of people talking about how Marvel needs to fire her. Isn't that crazy? They're all excited when Ant-Man and the Wasp was on, and they're like, "Oh, you're the first female that has your own, like, screen title or whatever. How does it make you feel?" And it's they're so excited, but they want her. There's people who want her fired, calling for her to be fired. Now, if Disney did something, that'd be a real punk move. And I don't think that'd be the case. I mean, they haven't gotten rid of Letitia Wright, who's Shuri on Black Panther, and she is an extraordinarily popular character. People really loved her in the film. People did really, really like her before. I don't know how her popularity is these days. There was, like, they're playing, like, Family Feud or something, and they're like, who's with, like, people from the Avengers, like, who's the person you'd want to take to prom, like, and I think she was, like, the number one answer. People really like her. But people wanted her gone. We're saying they should have fired her. They're like, fire her and fire Evangeline. And I saw a tweet. As someone said, and these women are supposed to be playing the smart characters. How, this is a very sane post. It is a very sane post. And we live in a society where people talk about bodily autonomy all the time. And they talk about bodily autonomy with abortion. But they don't want to like apply that logic. Like they say it's a right because of a right to privacy or something, and that you're supposed to be able to it should be between a woman and her doctor. But whether you're vaccinated shouldn't be between you and your doctor. I can understand the effect that it has on everybody, herd immunity and so on. But the vaccine that we have right now is not as effective on the variant that we have right now. Like we would need a new vaccine that's more effective against all that. So the arguments are holding up right now. The logic's not there. But when you apply that to the comparison of abortion, we're talking about you may potentially spread it to someone, and there's a low possibility that that person will catch it from you and that they will get sick and die. That is a very low possibility. It starts, it depends on your age and your weight and your other comorbidities and stuff. So it varies, I'm not going to, it could be, the very low percentage, like less than 1% or something, or but it moves depending on your health. But an abortion is a deliberate ending of a life. Yet people will still say bodily autonomy, even though it has nothing to do with bodily autonomy, because bodily autonomy is about you making decisions about yourself, your body, your future, and there's someone else involved. So I was thinking about her and her bravery going out there and then admitting she was there. Because Hollywood is really enforcing that in places, and they really want celebrities to get on the train of supporting all this because public discourse is bad. We covered like Nicki Minaj like a whole entire week on this program. Especially her war with Joy Reid. It was glorious. So they really do not want big voices speaking out and encouraging other dissenters to think for themselves. So this was brave on her part to say this, and it should this is a normal logical stance again. This should not have been particularly brave. But I recognize that it is. I recognize that it is. But I started to think about other women who they uplift, like Busy Phillips or Michelle Williams, who was, I think it was the Golden Globes. It was either Oscars or Golden Globes, but I think it was the Golden Globes. She's pregnant, holding her like award or Golden Idol or whatever it is, talking about the importance of being able to choose when you start a family. So she's thankful, holding her little golden image idol, appreciative of the fact that she killed one of her children so she could be a professional pretender. That's what they do. Their jobs aren't essential. They're actors. It's fun to watch stuff on TV. I love The Greatest Showman. It's one of my favorite films. But it ain't that deep. It wasn't worth somebody's life, ma'am. And they'll just cheer. Yet Madonna going to the Women's March talking about blowing up the White House because with Trump, like there's not a day. Sometimes I think about blowing up the White House or whatever she said. There were so many crazy things they said at that march with celebrities going there, feeling free to say all this stuff without repercussions because that's the world they live in. And of course, there were commentary and people talked about him, and it was a lot of them said stuff that was too far. But isn't it a heck of a thing that they feel comfortable to say that crazy stuff? Isn't that insane? So they'll uplift all this crazy stuff, but there's people calling for her to be fired from a movie, a comic book movie, when she shrinks down and flies. That is silly. That is silly. So anyway, kudos to her. She said stuff in the past. This is a post from the past, and that Maggie Grace ended up commenting under, and all she said was, "Drop my kids off at gymnastics camp. They all washed their hands before going in. They are playing and laughing. Hashtag business as usual." Then Maggie Grace said, and those of you who don't know, Maggie Grace was also on Lost. She played Shannon. And I didn't like Shannon in the least bit. She was also the daughter in Taken, the Liam Neeson movie. So she was the one who was taken. And she was also in Twilight. I think she was a vampire who snitched on Bella and Edward and thought Renesmee was like an immortal child. And some of you are rolling your eyes like, oh my gosh, she saw that film. I did see it. My sisters were really into Twilight. Some of them were. Some of them were. Let me throw that out there. Not all of them. But yeah, I did see that film. And so she's been around. She's an actress. She said, "Hey there, I read your pre-edit post and I find it concerning. There's no need to panic, but at the same time, this is about all of us. The vulnerable, the immunocompromised, older folks. Sure, it's a free country, but how about choosing to exercise some of that wonderful freedom to have some compassion, trust, and trust extensive science here and not overwhelm the health system?" So I didn't want to like talk about how how much they are manipulating people's emotions. Like, use some of that freedom to silence everybody. Like trying to dampen her freedom of speech. She's taking her kids to gymnastics. She's like, they washed their hands, whatever. Like, want to go back to life. Let her kids play, experience life. Like, no. Use your platform to not talk about those things. Exercise your freedoms to not say things that make me uncomfortable. It's about everyone. I just want to pause for a second. Someone today, I did a TikTok, and I'll probably post it on my Facebook page, but they said a reply to me, and they said, I respect everyone's choice, but think about what's best for everyone in the US. And I just asked the question, I'm like, how do you know what's best for everyone? How do you know what's best for everyone? Because when the conversation, when it became known that if you do take the vaccine, you can still catch COVID, and you can still spread COVID. Conversation should have been more focused on, you do what's best for you. You talk to your doctor, and you make an informed decision, and then you have the freedom to make it, have your consent without fear of being fired and all this other kind of garbage that's going on. Like that's what should have happened, in my opinion, because who takes the liability when you make that decision? If your employer made you do it, the employer's not going to take on that financial liability if you get sick or if you die. They're not going to do it. Moderna's not going to do it. Pfizer's not going to do it. Johnson & Johnson ain't going to do it. There's supposed to be a fund from the government, but good luck. Good luck. So no one else is going to take this liability. So it's all on you if you decide to take it. So people need to be aware that this is about you, bro, if you want to take it. And it's rare, like, to have some kind of issue, like a serious one, but people do have them. So it does need to be your decision. But emotionally manipulating people so they're just like, this is about the collective and then it's about the group and stuff. I told her, I said, if you got vaccinated for me, like, kudos if you did it for yourself. But if you did it for me, you are not welcome. I didn't ask you to do that. I know that people are asking you to do that, but a lot of those people are also vaccinated, so they shouldn't have much to be afraid about. I didn't ask you to do that. I don't appreciate it. I'm not grateful. and that's not on me. It's not on me. Maybe that's a rough stance, but maybe someone needs to say it. But people who push it understand the psychology of pushing the group mentality. As a matter of fact, they try to debunk Robert Malone's psychosis formation theory, massive psychosis formation. Some of the people that the fact checkers got to debunk it actually like wrote or at least pushed papers or retweeted stuff about how they could use social behaviors to get people to comply. And so they understand that more people are willing to comply if you phrase it in a way that it is about the collective rather than the individual. And it makes sense because if it's about you are making calculated risk and you're deciding, well, this is my skin in the game. I can roll the dice or I'm going to do what's best for me. But if it's for the collective, it empowers people it empowers them with fear. You have people saying you're going to kill grandma. So they're guilting other people to do it. And then people who do participate, they are filled with like this, a lot of people, not everybody. But I'm sure you guys have encountered people who feel like they have a savior complex and they feel virtuous because they have done this thing for you. Maybe you didn't ask them to, but they feel virtuous about it. So they understand the mentality that's needed for this group. And it pushes more people to comply. So you can see this. I mean, saying you have to think about everyone. And use your platform. You know, you have this freedom. Sure, freedom. This is about everybody. Sure, it's a free country. Like that's so flippant. Like it's not a big deal that we live in a free country. Like it's not something that's supposed to be protected and cherished. Not everyone lives in a free country. Ungratefuls. One time, my mom cooked something. I can't remember if they bought like some value kind of stuff, or maybe she cooked something that everybody wasn't into. Maybe it was like everybody got like a McDonald's cheeseburger and fries or something like that, and it wasn't quite what someone wanted. And there was someone complaining, and my mom was like, "Shut up, you ungratefuls! You're lucky you ate it in soup." When she was talking about like condensed soup, you know, like chicken noodle soup. So that shut everybody down. It was funny. We repeated all the time. So that's why I said shut up ungratefuls like that. But people are so ungrateful for their freedoms. And you don't know what it's like until it's gone. You don't know what it's like until it's gone. You know, when people are when we pulled out of Afghanistan, and they were talking about how the Afghanistan army kind of fell apart, which from my understanding, they were kind of organized to fight sort of with our support. So yeah, they kind of fall apart. But people were saying if they're not willing to fight for their freedoms, then what are we supposed to do? And I understand that, but but it seems like here people aren't willing to fight for their freedoms. And all she did was make a post about dropping her kids off at gymnastics, and she's got someone who probably thinks she's a friend saying, "I don't know about that. It's a free country, but man." No doctor should have to choose which patients get life-saving care and which patients get sent home to die. Yet we have people who are saying if you're unvaccinated, you shouldn't be treated. That's like where we are on the scale of like cruelty now. The sort of triage that tragically happening in Italy right now. Please out Johns Hopkins Stats News. Think about how these small decisions affect your dad. And she brought up the woman's daddy. She brought up her daddy. And those in your community as ventilators run out and as you use your influence on such a large group of other people. I say this with all First of all, we have a crap ton of ventilators. They're really trying not to keep people on them. And we like Trump got with the private sector, they built a lot. And then from my knowledge, we had like too many. So I don't know where she is that she's like saying people are just out like that. Maybe it's happening in some places, but it sounds like she's like on the hysterical side of the news, but this is the part that gets me. I say this with all humility. Please rethink this. I say this with all humility. Your kids will be just fine without going to gymnastics. I promise. Smiley face. Be well. P.S. Daniel said he was doing a lot better, by the way. I don't know. Maybe you guys want to chat. I don't know who Daniel's, who she's referring to right there. Your kids will be just fine without gymnastics and just doing something that they love. Just getting back to normal. Just getting back to normal was triggered her to write that long post, to manipulate her emotions, to freedom. Bring up her dad. Like, what if something happened to your daddy? Think about your poor father. That is sick, man. And and that's sick really coming from her perspective. My dad was really sick with COVID, so this is so mean girl. like the high school passive aggressive sort of mean girl post that she took the time to write this, probably like, with all humility, how much do we have to take away from kids, by the way, saying they'll be just fine without gymnastics? Maybe it's more about than gymnastics. It's about getting back to normal life, getting into a routine. Barry Weiss was on Bill Maher's show talking about the injustice that we've done to kids over all this time. There's so many repercussions I haven't even thought about. I'm gonna play this clip for you guys. That it's all about children with like having trouble with speech patterns because they learn how to speak by looking at your mouth and reading lips. What have we been doing all this time? Wearing masks.
Jacqueline Teague says during this pandemic, her speech therapy clinic has seen an enormous shift in the ages of their patients. Before the pandemic, only 5% of patients were babies and toddlers. Today, it has soared to 20%. Many parents calling it COVID delayed.
We've seen a 364% increase in patient referrals of babies and toddlers from pediatricians and parents.
And they are children that are having a difficult time speaking.
Speech delayed.
Babies start learning how to speak by reading lips as young as 8 months. So what happens when lips and faces are covered up by masks? Well, therapists say for some kids, they can work around the mask and still learn to speak perfectly fine. But for others, it can cause speech delays.
There's no research out there yet to say that this could be causing speech and language delays, but most definitely it's, I'm sure, a factor. It's very important kids do see your face to learn, so they're watching your mouth.
That's orange. Can you say orange? Orange. That was a good try.
Brianna Gay is raising 5 children, but it's her youngest who needs therapy.
It definitely makes a difference when the world you're growing up in, you can't interact with people and their face. That's super important to babies. So
we're seeing a lot of things that look just like autism. They're not making any word attempts.
Like, when this all started, did you even really like think about that, ponder that being like a side effect of just all masking and just complying and living in this bubble for 3 years? You know, when we started to like relax with the masks and stuff, and I was in the grocery store and could just see people's face again, like smiling and stuff. I'm not like a sap or anything like that, but just something like that. I'm like, man, I miss this. And if I felt that like that, I know there's a lot of people who felt like that. Just that burst of small kindness when strangers exchange a smile. Little things like that. And just imagine the sort of effect people this stuff is having on kids who can't go to school. Most of them are open now, but for such a long time you had remote learning. There's people who are behind. There's people who went off to college who felt like totally unprepared because their senior year was wiped out, basically. I just saw a comment in my TikTok not too before I got started. They said their son is like 2 years behind. So maybe it's about more than gymnastics, Shannon. Her name was Maggie, but Shannon was a character. I mean, the audacity to write something like that to someone and you're trying to be kind or trying to show show humility. That's what she said, writing all this stuff. She tries to guilt trip her out of taking her kids to gymnastics. And here's what's really crazy about it. A lot of these people were living their lives silently, especially a lot of these celebrities, people with a lot of big money and stuff. People were mad at Arnold Schwarzenegger because he was basically like stay in, shut in, like you, and people were upset because he's supposed to be a Republican and whatever, and he's stomping on people's freedoms and just telling them to shove them and comply basically. And they're like, you live on this huge property. It's not the same when you tell other people to stay home versus you're a celebrity and you have all this land. I was watching The Masked Singer, and I was wondering what they were going to do when they brought it back, and I'm like, is that a live studio audience? I'm like, how is this possible? How is this? Aren't we all locked down? How is this possible? I got a live studio audience. And I really enjoyed the show. I really haven't been a fan too much after Jesse McCartney lost because he should have won season 3. I'm still upset about it, but Jenny does follow me on TikTok, so that's cool. I'm sorry for angry tweeting you when he lost. But I was baffled. I'm like, they got a live studio audience in there, because I think we need entertainment one way or another, but just escape. But a lot of entertainment you can't even escape, but that is like something you can't escape, I guess, escapism. But how are those things super essential? Like if you COVID is such a risk, you could still just shut all that stuff down. But there were people still shut down and having to take all these precautions and the mandates and stuff. And they had a live studio audience. And I was just baffled. And then they had like JoJo Siwa. They were at her house. Like they had an after Masked Singer show. And this is when I guess she was kicked off. And I'm like, well, how is it going with quarantine and all this other kind of stuff? And she's like, oh, it's really hard. And she's like in her room, like some kind of massive like candy room or something like that. Like they literally have sprinkles like glued onto the walls. When celebrities are doing their montages telling people to stay home, save lives, stay home, that is not the same as the life you are experiencing as a celebrity with all your acres in land. It's not the same experience. And people out losing their businesses, losing their livelihoods, wondering how they're going to put food on the table. They're like, just comply, do the right thing. And all these people we have a mental health crisis in the country as well. So I think it was about more than gymnastics. But while we're sitting at home having to deal with like all these lockdowns and stuff, you watch TV and it's scripted and they have COVID episodes and you're like, when did they film this? When did they film this Black Lives Matter episode? When did SWAT do this? These people were still working through all this. I like the show, but it don't seem that essential. These people find a way to do what they want to do. And their fear, I'm sure these people are in fear, but it's convenient fear. It is convenient fear. By the way, I've shown this graph, but this is just so amazing to me. How worried are you about getting sick from COVID-19 within the next year? And people who are vaccinated with the booster are still so very concerned about it. That's amazing. That's amazing. This isn't healthy. This isn't mentally healthy. And I think that's what Evangeline Lilly meant. Like, this is not healthy. Like, our society is like on the brink of sanity. And people find it virtuous to make you insane with them. It's crazy. Let's move on. Joe Biden, he did have a not so perfect phone call again. It was curious. Jake Tapper did post this, and then he took it down, and then people were pressuring them, or like were calling out, saying like, "Why'd you take this down?" And then it got reposted, I guess. But I don't know why that happened or not. It could have been like they had a typo or something in a post, and I don't know. Maybe there's a deep conspiracy there. Maybe it's not. It was just interesting. But Joe Biden had a phone call with Ukraine, and the White House's account from it is very different than Ukraine's.
We have breaking news for you in our world lead. A senior Ukrainian official tells CNN that today's phone call between President Biden and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, quote, did not go well. Our source tells CNN that the two disagreed about the immediacy of the threat of a Russian attack on Ukraine. The White House and Pentagon have been emphatic that they believe an attack could be imminent. We should note the White House just released its own readout of that call, and there was no mention of President Biden's warnings or the two presidents' disagreements. The White House did say Biden underscored America's commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty. CNN's Matthew Chance joins us now live from Kiev, Ukraine, with more. Matthew, what more are you learning about this disagreement on the Biden-Zelensky call? How heated did it get?
I'm not sure I could characterize how heated it got, but there was definitely a disagreement about the sort of level of risk that the country is facing when it comes to a Russian invasion. On the one hand, you've got President Biden. This is according to an official who briefed me on the conversation that was had on the telephone call this evening. On the one hand, President Biden saying the threat is imminent. I mean, we've heard this before. The Ukrainians pushing back on that, saying that the threat, according to their intelligence analysts, is a bit more ambiguous than that, and it's possible that there won't be an invasion, whereas President Biden apparently telling his Ukrainian counterpart that an invasion was virtually certain later on in February when the ground becomes more frozen in this country. He went on to say that he warned the Ukrainian leader that the capital, Kiev, this city here, could be sacked. And that's the word he apparently used, according to this Ukrainian official, sacked by Russian forces, who he said may attempt to occupy it. There was also some quite bad news delivered, although expected news, I think, delivered by the US president to the Ukrainian side. President Biden, according to this official who briefed me on the conversation, saying that he told the Ukrainian leader that Ukraine would not be getting significantly more military help, that there would be no US troops sent to Ukraine to defend it. We already knew that, of course, but it was reiterated again on this phone call. Also, no sophisticated weapons, further sophisticated weapons delivered to Ukraine from the United States. There would be no progress on NATO, and there would be no sanctions imposed on Russia preemptively. That would only happen once Russia invades. Let me just get this line out, quite impactful, if you forgive me. President Biden telling his counterpart that Ukraine should prepare for impact. So quite a stark warning there from the US leader.
All right, Matthew Chance reporting live for us in Kiev, Ukraine. Thank you so much.
I wonder how, like, was he like, come on, man? Or was he just like a puppet sort of flailing around on this call? So the White House's account was a little more not as panicked as what they just kind of described, like brace for impact. There have been people trying to say, no, we still have diplomatic options. I don't know what's going to happen there. And I know people talking about this will be the next World War III kind of level, because you're talking about potentially going to war with someone else who's like, nuclear power and all that other kind of stuff. It's not like some, the military power or what we think about what could go on. It's stuff we've gotten to in the Middle East versus with Russia is something that's kind of like more earth shattering, I think. But there's some people saying that Russia isn't like the superpower that it quite was, so they can flex, but it's not going to last long. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I'm concerned that Biden is at the helm, and I'm sure a lot of you are too. But we're saying, let's release the transcript of the call. And Biden, of course, at one point when Trump had his not so perfect phone call, was saying, release the transcript. And there, Jack Posobiec had like all all the he had all the like receipts from all these people who were like, release the transcript. So it was like a blast from the past. And of course, we do know that Trump ultimately did release his transcript. And people were still concerned about him releasing his transcript because they're like, this is not a good precedent because releasing a presidential phone call with other people like that, it could set a precedent that other people expect that in the future. And so the future is now. Do I think that Biden will get impeached over this not so perfect phone call? I don't think so. But it was a little funny to joke about. Again, I mentioned earlier at the start of the hour that I guess the start of the last hour because we're going into a new one now. Not a whole full hour. I'm just going a little long today. But I said that someone was like, "Oh, I heard this is an impeachable offense." I'm like, there might be precedent for that, and I'm like, I'll have to do more research. But of course, that wasn't too long ago. The Trump impeachment phone call thing was so bizarre, and Adam Schiff, remember when he like talked about it in like a gangster sort of way, and when he was talking about it on the floor, my mom was like, I was over my parents' house, and my mom was just around in the area, and she just overheard it. She's like, Trump said all that? I was like, no, he didn't. He's just exaggerating, really lying. There was no reason to dramatize the call in the way that Schiff did. He has an appropriate name, man. I tell you, he is such a shady character. He's such a shady character, and they have him do all sorts of stuff there, man, for the Democrats. But I guess that's why, because he's a shady character, and they need someone at the helm to do all that kind of shady stuff. And he's shameless, I suppose, is a good word. And then when they introduced the articles of impeachment, I'm like, there's like no crimes alleged in here. But really, they didn't. They kept saying, how dare you go after a political opponent? and then I don't know if we already knew this at the time, or if this is stuff that came out later about like Joe Biden when Trump was like coming into the office, that they were like spying on Trump and kind of looking at his people, and he was the one who suggested using the Logan Act. So have you guys really thought about this? I've said this before, but some of you kind of new chiming in, that the former administration, when Trump was in office, the former administration, the Biden administration, which included the Obama administration, which included Biden and a lot of other people who worked there, Jen Psaki and other people also worked for Obama at the time, they went in and sort of sabotaged the incoming administration so they could reinstall themselves. Of course, Obama is not the president right now, but his vice president is now the president. Do you understand how shady that is? Like FBI agents and stuff started getting liability insurance because they knew they were doing so many shady things that when like Trump was like inaugurated, they wanted to make sure that legally they had some kind of financial backing for their jobs and stuff. It's not normal. And Newsweek reported that. It's not like it was like, I don't know, the Daily Wire or something like that. They did so many crazy things. And they're like, well, peaceful transfer of power. I'm like, I guess you didn't fire any bullets, and you didn't, you yourselves didn't throw any punches or loot anything, but you got other people to do that kind of stuff. Or bailed them out so they could do those things. But you never really gave up your power. You just kind of waited in the wings. You just sort of waited in the wings. And of course, Hillary wasn't a part of the Obama administration at this time, but former Secretary of State. And she's the one who started like the Russia hoax, her and her people. And they eventually got busted on that too. So there's so much corruption. All these people accuse Trump of doing so many shady things, knowing that they've done shady, and in a lot of ways they dramatized Trump wasn't even like accurate. But the things they accuse the people on the right of doing are things that they do, and they do far worse, far, far worse. Last thing I do want to mention before I go, because I did put this in the summary, and this is the thing that was upset me, that I said you might get triggered today. So you guys are aware of the swimmer who's all in the news because he's a biological male, and he's did swim for the male team at one point, but now is on the women's team at UPenn. Well, apparently, this sir here still has his ding-a-ling and likes to go in the ladies' locker room. And some of the girls allege that he still likes chicks, by the way. Still says he's attracted to girls. And he be having his dingleberries out sometimes. He be having his dingleberries out. So there's been girls who have like anonymously spoken out, and it's been reported about some of the stuff that they say. Now I was already upset about quite a few things because they'll say like how he kind of brags about like, oh, this is so easy. Yeah, I'm sure it's easy when you can beat the girls by like 40 seconds. I'm sure that's easy. Because you do have a biological advantage. So there's something like people talk about toxic masculinity and the wrath and the tyranny of the patriarchy. This gentleman here, I don't care if he's taking hormones and grew his hair out, like he found a way to beat up chicks, not like throw hands, but to dunk on them. And he found a way to be hailed as a hero by some because he's trans. while making all these women feel awful. Making all these young girls feel awful. So they said sharing a locker room with a transgender swimmer, Lia Thomas, has become point of contention for some of her. I don't normally use their pronouns, but the story is written in that way, and I'm just trying to read through it. So FYI, who feel sharing a locker room with transgender student swimmer Lia Thomas has been a point of contention for some of her University of Pennsylvania teammates who feel uncomfortable changing in the private space, with some undergoing gender transition. The dailymail.com can reveal it's definitely awkward because Lia still has her male body parts and is still attracted to women, one swimmer on the team told dailymail.com in an exclusive interview. Lia has told her teammates that she dates women. So I guess he's a lesbian. He's a lesbian, flashing his bits. While Lia covers herself with a towel sometimes, there's a decent amount of nudity, the swimmer said, and she and others have had a glimpse at her private parts. She stated that team members have raised their concern with the coach trying to get Thomas ousted from female locker room, but got nowhere. Multiple swimmers have raised it multiple different times, the UPenn swimmer said, but we were basically told that we could not ostracize Lia by not having her in the locker room, and that there's nothing we can do about it, and that we basically have to roll over and accept it, or we cannot use our own locker room. It's really upsetting because Lia doesn't seem to care how it makes anyone else feel, the swimmer continued. The 35 of us are just supposed to accept being uncomfortable in our own space and the locker room for like the feelings of one. So he said they've gone to the coach, and the coach doesn't do anything or hasn't done anything. I don't understand why people don't understand that this makes women uncomfortable. And I don't understand why people don't feel that women deserve any sort of consideration. And I understand people are uncomfortable with their bodies. They go through this transformation. But you literally can't get everything that you want in life. And perhaps someone needs to have a conversation with someone that, hey, you may need to change in a locker room by yourself, or you may need to continue changing in the locker room with other people who have penises like you do. Okay, why can't that be like a real conversation with people? Why is it that all these other female swimmers are the ones who are forced into an awkward situation instead of just the one person who's making things awkward? seem like a crazy question to me. Matt Walsh was on Dr. Phil, and I know I haven't done my video on it yet, but he was having this conversation about people in the locker rooms, and he mentioned the Loudoun County situation where there was a boy who got to a girl in the girl's bathroom, sexually assaulted her, and the school tried to like kind of cover it up, which enraged the dad and so on. But we talked about that on the show, and it's on my website. You guys can go read about it. And then the person who was pro, gender ideology stuff was just kind of like, I don't really think it's a safety issue. And Matt's face was just so funny. It was just a quick second of awe. It was just a quick second of awe, but like, it was like, dude, did you really say that? And I don't think and I just want to make it known, I don't think just because you're in that space that someone is going to attack you like that. But when you are so protective of someone like in Loudoun County, you do open the door for predators who want to take advantage of a situation. Just like all the social justice stuff with like the crime, and they're like, oh, there's too many minorities getting locked up. We gotta change all this stuff. Now everyone's screwed. Did you guys hear that Congressperson Cori Bush, Black Lives Matter, was marched on the McCloskeys? Cori Bush, member of the squad, one of the newest ones. Her car was shot at like the other day. She apparently wasn't in the car. And I don't think someone was like aiming necessarily at her, but that's just how crime is right now. It's crazy everywhere. I'm glad she's okay. But that's a sort of like... People want to be so progressive that it's actually regressive. We are destroying our civilization with these bonker policies. So this is upsetting to me. The more I read about this kid, or at least through the eyes of these girls, it seems like he is just a bully who found the jackpot how to terrorize women like this. And I remember when the bathroom locker room talk started becoming a thing, and when Obama was still a president, and they were talking about like withholding funds if schools don't allow this. I don't know. I don't remember how deep it got. Obviously not that deep, but it was conversations that started to be had, and stuff that started to kind of push with his Justice Department and stuff in school and whatnot. And there was a story about a high school boy who wanted to go in the girls' locker room and stuff, and identified as a girl, and he liked girls still. I can't even imagine, because I remember being in high school, I didn't even like changing in front of the girls. I go in the stall. So I cannot imagine this. I can imagine this. Do you know, I wish I had the article. So BLM is like in trouble, by the way. People, because they can't figure out where all the money has gone, and the like founders of it they're pretty mum on it. So that's interesting news. I guess we'll have to talk about it next week. But I was thinking about BLM and how one of their tenets was to dismantle cisgender privilege. And you may be saying, what does that mean, and what does cisgender mean? Okay, cisgender means that you identify with the sex that you were like born in biologically, right? I'm a cisgender woman. I don't love using these terms, but that's what they say. Okay. So if you want to dismantle cisgender privilege, what does that mean? Well, BLM, they said that on their What We're About page. They didn't explain that. And if you see a BLM activist, please ask them what they mean by that. I did find an example, and I did a podcast about this, about how BLM had duped Christians and stuff. And I went through a whole list of like different examples of cisgender privilege that someone had made up. And this person was someone that Katie Couric had interviewed. So I didn't think they were like too fringe and it's not like I found a random Reddit user or something. There's someone who's been like interviewed by mainstream media. So in their list, they would include something like cisgender privilege could be like, you can go in the bathroom of your choosing without any sort of drama happening, or locker room. Okay. So all these female swimmers in a normal situation, just going to the locker room without any sort of drama, that's a cisgender privilege. So dismantling something like that, okay, would be Lia, the trans swimmer, being able to go into that locker room and them just shutting up and taking it and accepting it. That's something, that would be an example of dismantling cisgender privilege. I don't like it. I don't like it. You may be saying, that's so silly. I thought Black Lives Matter was about police brutality. No, it wasn't. You're a sucker. You're a sucker if that's what you thought. They had a What We're About page. They took it down now. You can't go find it on their website. You can Google it. I promise you can find it. When you talk about dismantling cisgender privilege, not everybody can win. Someone has to be uncomfortable in the situation. But why does it have to be him? And why can't it be him and not the 35 girls? It's their space. It's their sport. He's kicking all their butts, beating girls by 40 seconds. And he did lose to a trans man, so a biological female who's transitioning into a male. And some of the girls alleged or believe that he threw that race, that he wasn't going as fast as he normally does. So there's all sorts of shady stuff going on, and it's a shame that the college is letting this go on, the shame that the coach is letting this go on. And these poor girls, but you know what? I understand they want to swim, but they got to stand up and do something. If everybody's got to, when they show up, everybody starts protesting or something, or people refuse to swim, somebody's got to stand up and do something. I don't want to just keep reading anonymous, complaints from the swimmers about all this stuff. I can understand people being heartbroken, upset. I've read about them crying in locker rooms and stuff. How can someone be okay with this? This guy is awful. Awful. So, sorry to leave it on that sort of note, guys. I wanted to mention it today. That's the last thing I got for you guys today. Thank you guys for joining me on Black Tea News. Make sure you guys are visiting the website, checking out different content, different merchandise that I have at Black Tea, like the You Are Not That Special mugs, the My Money My Business mug. I already showed you guys that I'm Not the Victim You're Looking For. Denounce White Supremacy, Defeat Joe Biden shirt. That's a good one. So you guys can check out the stuff that I have on there. Also, if you guys are interested in any of my books, if you go to the merchandise page on Black Tea News, you can find a banner that will take you to my book website. All my stuff is available on Amazon. Slay Your Fear is a nonfiction faith book, and I wrote it after COVID because people had lost their minds and they needed something, so I made it. It's not exclusively about COVID, but gosh, I was inspired, and I'm like, I gotta write this book, so I did. But otherwise, I do have I did show you guys this the other day. This is a historical fiction fantasy book, and I do have paranormal romance books, contemporary fantasy books, stuff about mermaids and werewolves, and I have a vampire book coming out. Actually, that's a detail. I did tell you guys I would tell you more about it, but I didn't get my stuff together, so I guess we'll have to save that for Monday. But I will have it on Monday because it's going to go on pre-sale soon. So I guess Monday will be the day when I talk a little bit more about that. But I do also have children's books like the Super Kid I did mention today about the trials and tribulations of Super Kid. He doesn't actually have superpowers. He just believes he does because he has this overactive imagination. He teams up with this girl in his class, Kiara, who goes along with it because she has a big crush on him. She becomes Princess Lady Diva, and then they help out this other kid named Lee, and so he actually thinks it's real. So they train him. He becomes kind of like the Batman of their little team, and they go around the community just doing good. And so there's lots of great lessons in there about consequences, responsibility, why you shouldn't lie, and standing up for yourself and finding what makes you special, regardless of whether you have powers or not, and the power of imagination, and all kinds of good stuff. So go ahead and check out some of the stuff that I have. Thank you guys for joining me today, and I will see you guys next time.